So this order, when it comes down, could have very significant consequences for Israel. Well, at that point, the entire world will know that Israel is inflicting genocide against the Palestinians, and under Article 1, they will have an obligation, quote, to prevent, unquote, the genocide against the Palestinians. I believe that the Republic of South Africa will then take the order to the Security Council for enforcement. It appears so far that the United States government would exercise a veto power to prevent the Security Council from enforcing the order, which it's supposed to do under the terms of the United Nations Charter. But at that point, then, South Africa can take the order to the United Nations General Assembly for enforcement under the Uniting for Peace resolution. And that could produce the following consequences for Israel. First, the General Assembly could suspend Israel from participation in United Nations activities, exactly like the General Assembly suspended the criminal apartheid regime in South Africa at that time, and the genocidal Yugoslavia from participation in the United Nations organization. Second, the General Assembly could admit Palestine as a full-fledged UN member state. Right now, Palestine is a UN observer state like Switzerland, but the votes are there for it to be admitted as a full-fledged UN member state. Historically, no UN member state has ever been destroyed. And that's exactly what the Zionists want to do to the Palestinians, destroy them. So UN membership, I think, would protect them. Third, the General Assembly could set up an international criminal tribunal for Israel as a subsidiary organ under UN Charter Article 22. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia was set up by the Security Council, but the General Assembly can do the same, and they could start to prosecute high-level Israeli officials for genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity against the Palestinians. And then finally, the General Assembly can recommend comprehensive economic sanctions against Israel. Right now, as you know, North Korea suffers from near genocidal economic sanctions against it that were imposed by the General Assembly under the Uniting for Peace resolution.
This is an amazing ruling because it highlights everything that the South African team and, of course, Palestinians have been saying the entire time, which is that Israel is plausibly carrying out genocide. And so the fact that the court has indicated to Israel that they have to take measures to prevent genocide, to make sure that soldiers are doing the same, to prosecute those individuals who are inciting, including high government officials, and ensure that there is effective humanitarian aid is precisely what was sought by Palestinians. It's now up to the world to make sure that this court ruling is actually enacted.
But they did not call for an immediate ceasefire, as South Africa asked. The significance of this?
I think it's very difficult at this stage for the court to be pushing for a ceasefire. But in the fact that they said, first and foremost, that Israel has to take all measures to prevent acts of genocide is enough for the world to then be pushing for a ceasefire. It's really up to the international system as we know it to make sure that genocide is not carried out. And so it's imperative that this be followed up by countries around the world, making sure that Israel doesn't get to do whatever it wants to do with Palestinians in Gaza and continue this genocide.
And can you talk about the woman who we heard delivering the pronouncement of the court, Joan Donoghue? former State Department official, though she's not representing the United States in this, she represents the court. She was in the State Department under President Obama.
Well, yes, and she was one of the judges, one of 17 judges on the bench. 2 of them are ad hoc. One of the 15 permanent judges who ruled in favor of all of the measures that had been sought. Her term actually expires on February the 6th, and so she won't be with the court after that. But it was very important that this decision not just be a split court, but you can tell by the breadth of it that of the 17 judges, 2 being ad hoc, that on most of the issues, it was 15 versus 2, one being the Ugandan judge, and the second, of course, being the Israeli judge. And in some cases, it being 16-1, with the one, ironically, being the Ugandan judge.
Why the Ugandan judge?
It's not clear. It's not entirely clear why. It's clear why the Israeli judge, obviously. But what's more important is the fact that we see that this court has overwhelmingly decided in favor of South Africa, has overwhelmingly determined that there's plausible risk of genocide, and it becomes imperative upon the world community to now act. You know, the fact that it's taken 112 days for the world to finally recognize that this is genocide and that it had to go to court says something about the international legal system as we know it, which is that it's broken. But I'm hoping that based on this, the world will now begin to act, and rather than hiding behind all of these false claims that Israel has repeated for the past 112 days.
Your response to this ruling?
Hello. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I think this is really an unprecedented ruling. It signals, first and foremost, the end of Israeli impunity in the international legal system, which is huge, right? Israel has enjoyed impunity in the international legal system for decades, in the face of mounting evidence of gross violations of international law, of mass violence, occupation, siege, so on. This is the end of that era. So it's just the beginning of a process that it really, I think now, with a ruling that basically recognizes the plausibility of genocide, the fact that Israel is likely committing genocidal acts, this is the beginning of a process of isolating Israel, because any university, company, state now will have to consider moving forward whether it continues or doesn't continue, in many cases, I think, to engage with Israel because it is likely committing genocide. This also legally triggers third state responsibility on issues of prevention and complicity with genocide. And this is significantly important today, where in a few hours in a court in Florida, there will be the hearing in the case that the Center for Constitutional Rights has brought against Biden, Blinken, and Austin, indeed on complicity with genocide, U.S. complicity with genocide, and the failure to prevent genocide. So this might have actually a certain effect even on this case today in California and moving forward. So this is really unprecedented. Yes, it is a disappointment that the court did not order an immediate ceasefire, but it did order Israel to cease from any genocidal acts, which de facto is actually an order for ceasefire.
And what about the issue of getting aid into Gaza, Raz Segal?
Yeah, the court also issued an order on the urgent need, and it stressed, of course, the really unprecedented scale of destruction and killing, the dire situation in Gaza in terms of what we know, the levels of hunger and the spread of infectious disease. So it also ordered this, which is, again, very, very important. I mean, we all need to now wait and see what Israel's response to this will be.